You're about to discover something that will fundamentally shatter everything you thought you knew about reality. Right now, in this very moment, there's another version of you living the exact life you've been dreaming about. Not in some distant future that you're trying to manifest. Not in some fantasy world that doesn't exist. But right now, in a parallel reality that's just as real as the one you're experiencing in this moment. And here's what's going to sound absolutely insane until you understand the quantum mechanics behind it. That version of you isn't separated from you by time or space. You're separated by frequency, by vibration, by the specific electromagnetic signature that your consciousness is tuned into right now. Like a radio locked onto one station, while infinite other stations broadcast simultaneously on different frequencies. The quantum field doesn't operate on the linear timeline your logical mind has been conditioned to believe in. Past, present, and future existing in a neat little line? That's a construct. A useful illusion your brain creates to make sense of reality, but an illusion nonetheless. What quantum physics has proven, beyond any shadow of doubt, is that all possibilities exist simultaneously in what's called a superposition state. Every choice you could make, every path you could walk, every version of your life that could unfold, all of it exists right now in the quantum field as pure potential. Dr. Joe Dispenza spent years studying this phenomenon, bridging the gap between ancient mystical wisdom and cutting-edge neuroscience. What he discovered changes everything. When you're living from your past, recycling the same thoughts that lead to the same choices that lead to the same behaviors, that create the same experiences that generate the same emotions, you're essentially signing a contract with one specific reality over and over again. You're collapsing the quantum field into the same exact particle reality, day after day, year after year. But here's where it gets fascinating. Your parallel self, the one living your dream life, made different choices at key quantum decision points. Not necessarily huge, dramatic choices. Sometimes it was as simple as choosing a different thought in a crucial moment. Choosing to feel abundant when the bank account said otherwise. Choosing to act from love when fear was screaming. Choosing to trust the unknown when logic demanded certainty. Those quantum choices created a ripple effect that collapsed an entirely different reality into physical form. The mathematician Hugh Everett proposed something revolutionary with his many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Every time a quantum decision point occurs, reality doesn't just choose one outcome. It splits. Both outcomes happen. Both realities become real. You just become aware of one of them based on where your consciousness is focused, based on the frequency you're vibrating at. Think about that for a moment. Every significant choice you've ever made created a branching point where another you took the opposite path. There's a version of you that said yes when you said no, a version that took the risk when you played it safe, a version that trusted when you doubted. And that version isn't living in some theoretical physics equation. That version is living, breathing, experiencing a completely different reality right now. They wake up in a different home. They look in the mirror and see the same face, but a completely different energy radiating from their eyes. They check their bank account and see different numbers. They kiss a different person good morning, or maybe the same person but in a completely transformed relationship. They do work that lights them up instead of drains them. They move through the world with a confidence and certainty that seems impossible from where you're standing right now. The question that probably just arose in your mind is, why am I stuck in this version of reality instead of that one? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because the answer unlocks everything. You're not stuck. You've never been stuck. You've been tuned in. Like that radio we talked about earlier, you've been broadcasting and receiving on a very specific frequency, and that frequency has been determined by your habitual thoughts, your emotional patterns, your deeply ingrained beliefs about who you are and what's possible for you. Amit Goswami, the quantum physicist who literally wrote the book on consciousness creating reality, explains it this way. Consciousness is the ground of all being. Matter doesn't create consciousness. Consciousness creates matter by collapsing quantum possibilities into physical reality. You are not a biological machine that somehow became conscious. You are consciousness using a biological machine to experience reality. And the version of reality you experience is determined entirely by what your consciousness expects, believes, and vibrates at. Your parallel self vibrates at a different frequency. They've aligned their thoughts, emotions, and energy with the reality they're experiencing. Not because they tried really hard to manifest it through force and desperation, but because at some point, they made a fundamental shift in their state of being. They stopped trying to become someone different in the future and started being that person now. They stopped waiting for circumstances to change so they could feel abundant, loved, successful, free. They started generating those feelings first, and the quantum field had no choice but to reorganize physical reality to match that new frequency. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't affirmations in the mirror while your whole body screams the opposite message. This is quantum mechanics. When you change your electromagnetic signature, when you shift the frequency your heart and brain are broadcasting into the field, you quite literally tune into a different channel of reality. The particles around you, which exist in infinite possible arrangements, reorganize themselves to match your new signal. What looked like coincidence is actually quantum entanglement. What felt like luck is actually alignment. What seemed like magic is actually physics that most people just don't understand yet. The experiment that changed everything happened in a laboratory over 100 years ago, and most people still don't understand the implications of what was discovered. Scientists shot electrons through two slits to see how particles behave. What they found defied every law of classical physics and revealed something so profound about the nature of reality that many physicists still struggle to accept it. The electrons didn't behave like solid particles traveling through space. They behaved like waves of possibility, going through both slits simultaneously, existing in multiple states at once until the moment someone observed them. And here's the part that should stop you in your tracks. The act of observation collapsed those infinite possibilities into one single reality. The electron existed everywhere and nowhere until consciousness looked at it. Then it had to choose. It had to become something specific, something measurable, something real in the physical sense. This isn't philosophy. This isn't spiritual metaphor. This is observable, repeatable, scientifically verified fact. Consciousness collapses possibility into reality. Your awareness literally creates the physical world you experience. And if that's true for electrons, it's true for everything in your life, because everything in your life is made of those same quantum particles playing by those same quantum rules. Dr. Amit Goswami took this further than most scientists dared to go. He didn't just accept that observation affects reality at the quantum level. He proposed that consciousness is primary. That awareness itself is the fundamental fabric of the universe, and matter is simply consciousness observing itself into form. In his model, you're not a separate observer watching a pre-existing reality unfold. You're the universe experiencing itself through a specific point of awareness, and the reality you experience is quite literally a reflection of your consciousness. Now connect this to your parallel self. In the quantum field, before anything becomes physical, infinite versions of your life exist as pure potential. Infinite parallel realities where you made different choices, took different paths, became different versions of yourself. These aren't fantasies. These are actual quantum probability waves existing in superposition. And the version that collapses into your lived experience, the reality you wake up to every morning, is determined by where you place your conscious awareness and what frequency your entire being is vibrating at. Joe Dispenza bridges this quantum physics with neuroscience in a way that makes it actionable. Your brain is a quantum instrument. Every thought you think generates an electrical signal. Every emotion you feel creates a magnetic field. Together, your thoughts and feelings create an electromagnetic signature that broadcasts into the quantum field, like a radio tower sending out a signal. And the field responds. It has to respond. That's not belief. That's physics. Energy attracts matching energy. Frequency resonates with matching frequency. Here's where most people get tripped up. They think manifestation is about visualizing what you want for 15 minutes a day, while spending the other 23 hours and 45 minutes broadcasting the complete opposite signal. They see the dream life in their mind while their body is flooded with stress chemicals. They affirm abundance while their heart is contracting with fear and lack. They try to think their way into a new reality while their emotional state is signing a contract with the old one every single moment. Your parallel self didn't manifest their reality through this fragmented approach. They underwent a complete shift in state of being. They changed who they were at the energetic level, at the neurological level, at the quantum level. And when that shift happened, when their entire electromagnetic signature changed, the quantum field reorganized to match it. The right opportunities appeared, the right people showed up, the right circumstances aligned, not through magical thinking, but through quantum entanglement with a different probability stream. The double-slit experiment revealed another crucial piece. Particles that have interacted once remain connected regardless of distance. Change the state of one particle, and the other responds instantaneously, even if it's on the other side of the universe. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance because it violated everything classical physics said was possible. But it's real. It's measurable. It's called quantum entanglement. And if particles can remain entangled across space and time, then you and your parallel self are entangled. You're connected through the quantum field. What affects one affects the other. This means your parallel self isn't some separate entity living in an unreachable dimension. You and that version of you are two expressions of the same consciousness, entangled at the quantum level, experiencing different collapsed realities based on different vibrational states. The gap between you isn't physical distance, it's frequency distance, and frequency can be changed. Your electromagnetic signature can be shifted. Your state of being can be transformed. But here's what stops most people from making that shift. Their body has become addicted to being them. Your body doesn't know the difference between an emotion created by an actual experience and an emotion created by thought alone. When you replay the same mental loops, when you relive the same past experiences, when you project the same fears into the future, your body gets flooded with the same chemical cocktail over and over again. Stress hormones, survival emotions, the chemistry of lack, fear, unworthiness, limitation. And just like any addiction, your body starts to crave those chemicals. It becomes physiologically addicted to being anxious, to being stressed, to being the victim, to being unworthy. So when you try to shift into the frequency of your parallel self, when you try to feel abundant or peaceful or powerful, before the physical evidence shows up, your body literally revolts. It sends urgent signals to your brain. This doesn't feel like me, this feels wrong. Go back to the familiar feeling. Go back to the known. Go back to the chemical state we're addicted to. This is why most people fail at transformation. They're fighting against years, sometimes decades, of neural conditioning and chemical addiction. Their conscious mind wants change, but their subconscious mind and their body are running programs that keep recreating the same reality over and over. The same neural pathways firing in the same sequence, producing the same thoughts, generating the same emotions, creating the same electromagnetic signature, collapsing the same quantum possibilities into the same physical reality. Your parallel self broke that cycle. At some point, they became so conscious of these unconscious patterns that they could interrupt them. They caught themselves in the act of being their old self and chose differently. Not once, but over and over again until the new patterns became stronger than the old ones. Until their body got addicted to elevated emotions instead of survival emotions. Until their brain started firing in new sequences that created new thoughts, that generated new choices, that produced new experiences. The quantum field is neutral. It doesn't judge. It doesn't decide who deserves what. It simply responds to the signal you're broadcasting. If you're broadcasting lack, it returns lack. If you're broadcasting fear, it returns more things to fear. If you're broadcasting the victim frequency, it returns experiences that confirm your victimhood. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because you're collapsing quantum possibilities that match your signal. You're tuning into the reality that resonates with your current state of being. The version of reality you're experiencing right now isn't random. It's not bad luck. It's not because you haven't worked hard enough or because the universe has forgotten about you. You're locked into this specific timeline because of patterns running so deep in your neurology that you don't even recognize them as patterns anymore. They feel like you. They feel like reality. They feel like just the way things are, but they're not. They're loops. Sophisticated, invisible loops that your brain runs on autopilot, collapsing the same quantum possibilities into the same physical experiences day after day after day. Here's what's actually happening beneath your conscious awareness. Every experience you've ever had created a neurological pathway in your brain. Every strong emotion you've felt chemically conditioned your body. Every belief you've accepted about yourself and the world hardened into a filter through which you perceive reality. And over time, these pathways, chemicals, and filters created something neuroscientists call a default mode network. It's your autopilot. It's the version of you that runs when you're not paying attention. And here's the devastating truth. You're not paying attention most of the time. Studies show that 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program. Only 5% of your mind is actually conscious, actually present, actually creating in real time. The rest is your subconscious running yesterday's software, trying to create tomorrow. And it can't. All it can do is recreate more of yesterday. Your parallel self understood something crucial that broke them free from this loop. They realized that every time they woke up and started their day running the same mental routine, they were making a choice. An unconscious choice, but a choice nonetheless. A choice to be the same person who would make the same decisions that would create the same outcomes. They saw that thinking the same thoughts was quite literally hardening the same neural pathways, making those thoughts easier to think again tomorrow, creating a neurological prison that felt like personality, but was actually just habit. And the body, your body is the unconscious mind. It doesn't understand English or any spoken language. It only understands chemistry and feeling. So when you've spent years, maybe decades, feeling unworthy, your body knows exactly what unworthiness feels like at the chemical level. It knows the precise cocktail of stress hormones, neuropeptides, and chemical signals that create that familiar feeling. And because the body's job is to maintain homeostasis, to keep everything familiar and predictable and safe, it will do everything in its power to return you to that known chemical state. This is why you can read every self-help book, watch every motivational video, set every intention, and still end up back in the same patterns. Your conscious mind wants change, but your body wants familiarity. And in that battle, the body wins almost every time because it's operating from the subconscious, which is 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious willpower. The subconscious is the quantum field's direct line to your biology. It's running the show behind the scenes, collapsing realities that match your memorized emotional states. Joe Dispenza calls this living in survival mode. When you're constantly recycled the emotions of the past, your body thinks it's under threat. It thinks the past is happening right now. So it floods your system with cortisol, adrenaline, all the emergency chemicals designed for short-term survival. These chemicals are highly addictive. They make you feel alive, alert, focused. But they also shut down your creative centers. They pull all your energy into protection mode. They make it impossible to access the quantum field, where all possibilities exist, because you're biologically locked into the known, the predictable, the safe. Your brain can't tell the difference between what's actually happening in your external environment and what you're imagining or remembering in your internal environment. This has been proven in brain imaging studies over and over again. When you replay a traumatic memory, your brain lights up in the exact same patterns as when the trauma actually occurred. When you imagine a fearful future scenario, your brain and body respond as if that future is happening right now. You're literally living in a time that doesn't exist, and your body is paying the price. So you wake up every morning, and before your eyes even open, your brain starts firing in familiar sequences. You start thinking about your problems, which are just memories of the past projected into the future. Those thoughts generate the same emotions you felt yesterday. Those emotions influence your choices today. Those choices create the same behaviors. Those behaviors produce the same experiences. And those experiences create the same emotions that drive the same thoughts, completing the loop. This is the neurological prison. This is why your life looks the same year after year. Your parallel self broke this cycle by becoming aware of it. They started observing their thoughts instead of being their thoughts. They started noticing their emotional patterns instead of being hijacked by them. They created space between stimulus and response. And in that space, they found choice. Real choice. Quantum choice. The choice to collapse a different possibility into reality by choosing a different thought. a different feeling, a different state of being in that moment. But here's what makes it so difficult. When you start to change, when you stop feeding your body the familiar emotions it's addicted to, you go through withdrawal. Your body starts sending urgent messages to your brain. Something's wrong, this doesn't feel right, go back to anxiety, go back to unworthiness, go back to the known. And most people interpret those signals as evidence that change isn't working. They think feeling uncomfortable means they're doing something wrong, so they retreat back into the familiar patterns. The parallel version of you pushed through that discomfort. They understood that the discomfort wasn't a sign of failure. It was a sign of change. It was their body releasing its addiction to the old self. It was old neural pathways dissolving and new ones forming. It was the quantum field reorganizing. And instead of running back to the familiar, they stayed in the unknown long enough for the unknown to become known. They stayed in the new energy long enough for their body to accept it as the new normal. Now let's talk about the proof. Because your logical mind needs evidence, and the evidence is everywhere once you know what to look for. You've experienced it yourself, even if you didn't have the framework to understand what was happening. Those moments of inexplicable knowing, those dreams that seem to predict the future, those coincidences so specific and perfectly timed that calling them random feels absurd, those déjà vu experiences where you swear you've lived this exact moment before. These aren't glitches in the matrix. They're glimpses of the quantum truth. They're your consciousness briefly accessing other timelines, other versions of reality, other expressions of you existing simultaneously. Déjà vu is one of the most common and most dismissed experiences. You're in a conversation or a location and suddenly you're hit with this overwhelming sense that you've been here before, said these exact words before, felt this exact feeling before. Science tries to explain it away as a misfiring in your temporal lobe, a trick of memory processing. But quantum physics offers a far more interesting explanation. What if déjà vu is a moment when your consciousness overlaps with a parallel version of you who has already experienced this moment? What if it's a quantum entanglement event where two timelines briefly touch, and you get a flash of recognition from another you? Precognitive dreams are another crack in the illusion of linear time. You dream something specific and detailed, then days or weeks or months later, that exact scenario plays out in your waking life. The skeptics call it coincidence or selective memory. But when it's happened to you, when you've felt that unmistakable recognition of living something you already experienced in a dream, you know it's more than that. In the quantum model, time isn't linear. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Your consciousness, especially in the theta and delta brainwave states of deep sleep, isn't bound by the same limitations as your waking mind. It can access information from what you perceive as the future because that future already exists as a collapsed reality in another timeline. Synchronicities are perhaps the most tangible proof of quantum mechanics operating in your daily life. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years and within hours they call you. You need a specific piece of information or help, and the exact right person appears at the exact right moment. You're struggling with a decision, and you randomly open a book to a page that directly addresses your situation. Carl Jung called these meaningful coincidences, but they're more than that. They're evidence of quantum entanglement, of the non-local nature of consciousness, of the field responding to your energetic signature. When you're vibrating at a certain frequency, you become entangled with all the people, circumstances, and opportunities that match that frequency. The field organizes reality to bring you into contact with matching energies. This is why when you're in a negative spiral, everything seems to go wrong. You're not cursed. You're entangled with negative probability streams. And when you shift your state, when you elevate your frequency, suddenly positive synchronicities start flowing. Not because you're lucky, but because you've quantum entangled with a different set of possibilities. Near-death experiences provide some of the most compelling evidence for parallel realities and the primacy of consciousness. Thousands of documented cases describe people who were clinically dead, no brain activity, no heartbeat, and yet they report vivid, coherent experiences. They describe leaving their body, moving through darkness or light, and here's the crucial part. Many of them describe experiencing multiple versions of their life simultaneously. They see the life they lived, but they also see the lives they could have lived, the paths not taken, the choices that would have led to completely different outcomes. They experience the multiverse directly. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, studied near-death experiences for decades and concluded that consciousness is not produced by the brain. The brain is a receiver, like a television set. Consciousness exists independent of the physical body, and it has access to information and realities beyond the physical plane. People who've had these experiences often return with a profound knowing that linear time is an illusion, that all possibilities exist simultaneously, and that the life you experience is just one channel your consciousness is tuned into. Quantum entanglement experiments have proven that particles can remain connected across any distance. Change the spin of one entangled particle, and its partner changes instantaneously, even if it's galaxies away. This violates the speed of light limit that Einstein said was absolute. Yet it happens. It's been measured. It's been verified. And if it's true for particles, it has profound implications for consciousness. Your thoughts, your intentions, your focus can instantaneously affect people and situations across any distance because at the quantum level, separation is an illusion. Everything is entangled. This is how prayer works when it works. This is how intention affects outcomes in double-blind studies. This is how you can feel when something's happened to a loved one before you get the phone call. You're quantum entangled with the people and situations you're emotionally connected to. Your consciousness isn't confined to your skull. It extends into the field, touching and influencing and connecting with everything that matches your frequency. Your parallel self exists in this same quantum field. Every version of you across all possible timelines is entangled with every other version because you're all expressions of the same consciousness. The boundaries between these versions aren't solid walls. They're more like permeable membranes. And in certain states of consciousness, in certain moments of heightened awareness or deep meditation, or even in dreams, you can access information from these other versions. You can feel their experiences. You can download their knowing. You can align with their frequency. People who've experienced spontaneous shifts in their reality often describe a feeling right before it happened, a sense that something was different, a subtle change in the texture of their experience. They felt like they'd stepped sideways into a slightly different version of their life. Details seemed off. People reacted differently than expected. Opportunities appeared that shouldn't have been possible. They'd experienced a timeline shift, a quantum jump into a parallel probability stream, and their consciousness noticed even though their logical mind tried to rationalize it away. The proof is in your own experience if you're honest enough to look at it without the filter of conventional thinking. How many times have you known something was going to happen before it did? How many times have you felt a pull toward a decision that made no logical sense but turned out to be exactly right? How many times have you experienced a coincidence so perfectly orchestrated that it had to be more than chance? These are all moments when the quantum nature of reality bled through into your conscious awareness. Your parallel self is sending you signals constantly. Those intuitive hits, those gut feelings, those sudden inspirations that seem to come from nowhere. That restlessness you feel, that sense that there's more. That knowing deep in your bones that you're capable of living a completely different reality. That's not wishful thinking. That's quantum entanglement with the version of you who's already living it. They're pulling you toward their frequency. They're calling you home to the reality you're meant to experience. The question is, are you listening? So here you are, standing at the edge of the most important decision you'll ever make. And it's not a decision about doing something. It's a decision about being someone. The version of you that you've been up until this moment was created by unconscious patterns, inherited beliefs, recycled emotions, and default neural programming. That version served a purpose. It kept you safe. It kept you alive. But it's not capable of collapsing the reality your parallel self is living. You can't become that version of you by thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and taking the same actions. You have to become someone else entirely at the energetic level. And this is where most people hesitate. Because becoming someone new means dying to who you've been. It means letting go of the familiar identity you've worn like a comfortable old coat. Even if that coat is worn out, and doesn't fit the life you want to live. Your ego will scream. Your body will resist. Your environment will try to pull you back into the old patterns because everyone around you is used to the old you, and your change threatens the stability of their reality. But here's what you need to understand with absolute clarity. Every single moment you're choosing. You might think you're just existing, just getting through the day, just responding to whatever life throws at you. But at the quantum level, every thought is a choice. Every emotion is a choice. Every time you react from old programming instead of responding from conscious awareness, you're choosing to collapse the same reality you've been living. You're voting for the familiar timeline. You're tuning back into the frequency of the life you say you want to change. The parallel version of you made a different choice. They chose the unknown over the known. They chose the discomfort of growth over the comfort of stagnation. They chose to feel abundant before the bank account changed. They chose to feel worthy before anyone validated them. They chose to feel successful before the evidence appeared. And because they held that frequency consistently, because they became that person in their energy before they became that person in their circumstances, the quantum field had no option but to reorganize reality to match their new electromagnetic signature. You have that same power. You've always had it. The only difference between you and the version living your dream life is the decision to use it. To stop waiting for something external to change so you can feel different internally. To start generating the elevated emotions of your desired reality right now in this moment, regardless of what your current circumstances are screaming at you. This isn't about pretending everything is fine when it's not. This isn't about bypassing genuine emotions or spiritual bypassing. This is about understanding that your emotional state is the quantum language the field responds to. When you're living in survival emotions, stress, fear, anxiety, unworthiness, you're speaking to the field in the language of lack and limitation. And it returns more lack and limitation because that's what you're asking for energetically. When you shift into elevated emotions, gratitude, joy, love, abundance, before the physical evidence shows up, you're speaking a different language to the field. You're broadcasting a different frequency. And the field responds by collapsing different possibilities. Opportunities that weren't visible before suddenly appear. People who can help you show up at exactly the right moment. Resources flow. Doors open, not through magic, but through quantum mechanics. The shift happens in meditation, not the kind of meditation where you're trying to quiet your mind or just relax. The kind of meditation where you're actively creating, where you're moving beyond your body, beyond your environment, beyond time itself, and entering the quantum field as pure consciousness. In that space, you're no longer bound by the limitations of your current reality. You can try on the energy of your parallel self. You can feel what they feel. You can think what they think. You can be who they are. And when you do that consistently, when you spend time every single day in that elevated state, something remarkable happens. Your brain starts creating new neural pathways. Your body starts releasing its addiction to the old emotions. Your electromagnetic signature begins to shift. You start collapsing different quantum possibilities. And your external reality, which is always a mirror of your internal state, begins to reorganize itself to match the new you. But you have to be willing to do the work when nobody's watching, when there's no evidence yet, when your logical mind is screaming that this is a waste of time, when your body is in withdrawal from the old emotions and everything in you wants to go back to the familiar. That's when the real transformation happens. That's when you prove to the quantum field that you're serious about this shift. That's when you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being a creator of your reality. Your parallel self is not separate from you. They're entangled with you at the quantum level. Every time you meditate, every time you choose an elevated emotion, every time you interrupt an old pattern, you're moving closer to their frequency. You're thinning the membrane between your current timeline and theirs. And at some point, if you stay consistent, if you don't give up when the old reality tries to pull you back, you'll experience a collapse, a quantum jump, a moment where you look around and realize you're not living the same life anymore. The details have changed. The energy has changed. You have changed. This is not theory. This is not wishful thinking. This is documented, proven, repeatable science combined with ancient wisdom that mystics have known for thousands of years. You are a quantum creator, living in a quantum field of infinite possibilities. The reality you're experiencing right now is just one collapsed probability out of infinite options, and you have the power to collapse a different one. The question is, will you? Will you make the decision right now, in this moment, to stop being the old you? To stop feeding the patterns that have kept you locked in a reality that doesn't serve you? To stop waiting for perfect conditions and start creating from the field of pure potential? Your parallel self made that decision. They took the leap. They trusted the unknown. They became comfortable with the discomfort. And now they're living the life you dream about. Not because they're special, not because they were chosen, but because they chose. They chose to shift their state of being. They chose to align with a different frequency. They chose to collapse a different reality. Now it's your turn. The quantum field is waiting. Your parallel self is calling. The only thing standing between you and that reality is the decision to become the version of you that's already living it. And that decision can only be made now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when conditions are perfect. Now, in this moment. Because this moment is the only moment that exists at the quantum level. The past is a memory. The future is a projection. The only place you can shift your frequency, the only place you can collapse a new reality, is right here, right now. If something inside you recognizes this truth,